Tonight, the discussion will not be focusing on the religious side of the halal logistic, but it will be focusing on the beneficial side of halal logistic. Currently, Mr. here with us is Mr. Marco Tieman from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. He's been a very respected person in the side of halal logistic. Been quite a while since he's been doing his work on halal logistic. He is CEO of LBB International Malaysia and also adjunct professor for Azman Hashim International Business School in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Also with us tonight is Ibu Nurhayati. She is a faculty member of Universitas of Prasetiya Mulya. She will be doing the discussion about the food safety and food distribution. It will be all in English, but I'm hoping that you can catch in, and then if you have any question, I will be having this on the last session of this as per my question, as per my chat in the timeline in the chat column. Okay, I think that will be all. Maybe we can start the event. Let's start with Mr. Marco. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Marco.
Thank you, Pak Rizky. First of all, I would like to thank ICA Prama and also ICA Prama Supply Chain Club for inviting me to speak on this important topic during this webinar on halal logistics. I think we live in interesting times, as they say, and I think Indonesia plays a leading role in the Muslim world. I was very privileged last month to be in Jeddah during the ISDB group annual meeting, where also there was an important announcement by Indonesia to become the biggest sponsor of ISDB and also will be taking leading positions in the ISDB. So I think Indonesia have been taking enormous steps in the halal industry, and I think that's really something to be congratulating Indonesia with this because of the leadership role Indonesia has been taking. In my talk, I would like to share some insights on risk management in halal supply chains. In particular, I will be covering the topic of halal market alignment. Then I will be sharing more insights into halal risk management practices, halal risk control, and finally the topic of halal risk reporting. So it is important to recognize that halal is not static, it's highly dynamic. So we have seen that the regulatory environment under Law 33 in Indonesia, making halal certification mandatory by October 2024, first for food, and in stages, it will be later also to non-food products, going towards cosmetics and pharmaceutical products. We also see that the Muslim consumer needs and wants are also changing from an halal trust perspective towards the need for a halal logo, but now further the Muslim consumer wants to verify that the products are properly halal certified, should be traceable, towards a halal ecosystem and brand. So what we see is that halal is moving away towards a halal supply chain approach where traceability is important to embrace the halal lifestyle of the Muslim consumer. This means a reaction also from the industry, from the brand owners when they're operating in Indonesia and other leading Muslim countries like Malaysia, Brunei, UAE, as well as the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It requires response from the brand owner that need to move the ambition level from purely being halal certified towards looking at halal risk and reputation management, moving towards a total halal DNA for companies, a total halal value chain. So we live in interesting times where brand owners are required to move their emission level from halal certified towards halal risk and reputation and halal DNA. This requires to look at where to put my factory. So we have seen in Indonesia the development of halal parks. Modern Halal Valley, I'm a project director there in Banten, Cikande. This is an example of a halal ecosystem that will benefit brand owners, that allows them to move to the next level. Also, halal logistics will be important. Halal logistics will be required under the new Law 33, where halal needs to be addressed throughout the supply chain, starting with halal food. So halal risk management, how is it being organized nowadays? It's good to realize that brand owners, with all their actions and all their communication, will result in the corporate halal reputation of a brand owner. The brand owner is also responsible to design its supply chain. It will identify the suppliers, it will appoint distributors, it will appoint logistics service providers. So the brand owner is the architect behind his own halal supply chain. The halal integrity of the end product is a function of each link in the supply chain. And unfortunately, the halal integrity of a product is as strong as its weakest link and not as strong as its strongest link. So we need to be able to organize the entire supply chain from end to end and allow also to protect the halal integrity throughout the supply chain by especially looking at halal logistics. So what we see that halal risk management is highly passive by companies. They're looking at what are the requirements from my halal certification body, what are the halal standards, what does it say, and then they try to fulfill a passive approach, purely looking at compliance. The entire risk throughout the supply chain, which are not always audited by the halal certification body, are not on the radar screen, right? So assuming that your halal assurance system and assuming that your current risk response and crisis manual are sufficient is an extremely dangerous strategy for companies. So what are some of the gaps we find when we conduct audits? So in my work in the LB International, we conduct supply chain audits, halal supply chain audits for brand owners. So what are the common gaps we find? So first of all, we see that the people, when we visit the factory to be halal certified or are already halal certified, that the people are trained. But if we look beyond the factory, so at the head office or at the other partners in the supply chain, sometimes even their suppliers, their distributors, their logistics service providers, e-commerce and retailers, we find out that a lot of people are not trained on halal. So that's a problem, because if you're not trained on halal, you also not are familiar with SOPs to protect the halal integrity. We also see that the halal status is not systematically communicated on freight documents, on labels, and in IT. So if you are not communicating the halal status in cargo, on cargo labels, in IT system, you are not communicating the halal status throughout your supply chain. In logistics, unfortunately, we like to consolidate everything together in storage and in transport. And so if we are consolidating and we don't know it has a halal status, we are mixing halal and non-halal together in transportation and storage, impacting the halal integrity along the supply chain. Also, what we see is that the halal status of cargo is not the consolidation requirement to transportation and storage, not in contracts, resulting that halal and non-halal is being mixed throughout the supply chain. So we see that halal SOPs are often well defined in a factory, but not in other business functions. So not sufficiently in purchasing, not sufficiently by branding, marketing, and sales. and not sufficiently by the logistics and supply chain partners, as well as key supply chain partners like distributors, retailers, and logistic service providers. We also see that halal requirements are not covered in contracts. So we see in contracts with supply chain partners, food safety being addressed, hygiene and pest management, but we often do not see a halal clause. So if there's no halal clause, then how can you expect that your supply chain partners address halal? The service industry, what we see, is also not well prepared for halal issue management. So brand owners, manufacturers often have a quite developed crisis manual and practices and repetition. We don't see that same level of practice by distributors, logistics service providers, or even retailers. So there's a mismatch by the capability of crisis management and issue management. Finally, there are a lot of opportunities for collaboration. In the Ummah, as Muslims among each other, we have to help and we have to collaborate. In the industry, we see something else. We do not want to work together. So I think by working together, you can not only achieve lower prices, but also improve the integrity of halal supply chains. So what is the consequence of those current practices in the industry? That at the end, we see a defective halal assurance system of brand owners and also defective risk and crisis management, right? So we see that brand owners are not well prepared for halal incidents, and this is affecting their sales as well as the corporate halal reputation. And we have seen numerous examples in Indonesia, in Malaysia, and in other Muslim countries where the Muslim consumer created problems for brand owners, where they highlighted some issues or potential issues with their brand. So when you are not prepared in proper risk management throughout the supply chain, you are exposed as a brand owner. So what are some important tools for the industry to look at and to develop? So what are important capabilities for the industry to learn? So we need to organize halal risk management, first of all, by companies. And we have to identify that in companies, how to organize risk management. So risk management in a company is responsible for the halal certification decision. So for which products and markets do we need halal certification? So if you are active in Indonesia, a Muslim majority country, you need to get halal certified for a lot of your products, food, but also non-food, if you talk about cosmetics and pharmaceuticals. So that is a decision. Because you're operating in Muslim majority country, we should get our products halal certified from a risk management approach. Marketing, on the other hand, the marketing function might decide to show or not to show the halal logo on the product. That's a different decision. But risk management decides to get the products halal certified. Marketing or regulation will determine if they show or not show the halal logo on the end products for the consumer. A second important responsibility of risk management is the monitoring of halal risks. So this in order to protect the corporate reputation of companies and also the halal certificate of the company operating in Muslim markets. Finally, risk management is responsible also for proper issue management and crisis management. So these are important responsibilities for a company to organize. So traditionally, a lot of companies, they focus on the halal assurance system, also known as HAS, right? But it needs more building blocks to more actively and proactively address risk and reputation management. You need three more components. First of all, prevention you need to create a robust halal supply chain through reducing vulnerabilities in your supply chain. More on that later. Secondly, we need to have proper issue management and response management. So in case there is an issue, a halal incident, how can we isolate the incident and minimize the impact of the incident on the supply chain, on the halal integrity, as well as reputation of the company. Thirdly, in case it is escalated from an issue to a full-blown crisis, we need to look at how can we restore our reputation and social capital as a company, as a brand owner. So these three building blocks need to be worked on by brand owners. Prevention. What you first of all should need to do is to understand your entire halal supply chain. So what are the risks currently in my halal supply chain? You can do that through a halal supply chain audit. So we have been helping brand owners in assessing their halal supply chain. Based on the issues we find in a supply chain, we relook at how best to improve your supply chain. And so we identify your halal control points and put proper control measures into place to improve your supply chain, to create a more robust supply chain. Thirdly, we're also looking at how can we create collaborations in your supply chain, not only within your own supply chain, but also maybe work with competitors in the market within the same industry, where you can work together in simplifying transportation, warehousing, in distributing to all the many islands Indonesia has. You can better organize it together instead of sending a small, less LCL container. You can send, if you work together in transport, you can send a full container to a small island in Indonesia, better protecting your halal integrity. And finally, monitoring. You should monitor also your halal performance. So more on that later, where I can share more insights on the halal performance indicators which you can monitor. The second component is mitigation, issue management, when there is a halal issue. The first step in a halal issue is, first of all, to conduct an investigative audit. First of all, you have to understand if it's a halal issue or a non-halal issue, right? If it is a halal issue, it's important to establish a cross-functional team, also with halal expertise in there. Next to the halal management team, also you might include also halal experts, also from outside. And it can be from BPIPH, Majelis Ulama Indonesia, or halal consultants that have a lot of insights in halal assurance system and in halal crisis management. What you then need to do is implement a halal risk mitigation and communication plan. The only way to implement this during a halal issue is that you have already prepared it before there is a halal issue. So it's important for big brand owners to prepare a proper risk mitigation plan. A risk mitigation plan is important because in case there is a halal issue, you often need to have important decisions to make, like product recall. We need to inform the halal authority. We need to communicate with the Muslim association on the matter. We need to do stop of the factory. We need to do ritual cleansing. So there might be big steps involved, which needs the authorization of top management. The only way to make that possible in a quick time is that you have already pre-approved risk mitigation and communication plan, which has been established before, has been pre-approved by the management, which you can then implement quickly in case of a certain scenario takes place. In case there is a halal incident, it's important to monitor the impact of the incident and your actions on the Muslim consumer perception. And so you can measure, for example, the halal trust through surveys in the market to see what is the impact of the incident on the consumer trust for your halal brand. And with our actions, do we see improvements in that? So monitoring is extremely important in case of an incident, in particular, the impact of the incident on the Muslim consumer trust of the brand. The third component is recovery. For recovery, when there has been an escalation of an issue in a full-blown crisis, you need to put actions into place and communications into place that repair the corporate brand, the repair the halal trust, Islamic values, and the network of the company. So for this, you might need to implement a risk recovery and communication plan. Again, you can only roll that one out if it has been developed before. So this is a crisis management plan that really are put into place to repair the corporate brand of the organization. Important to be developed before an actual incident. When implementing this plan, it's important to resume operation and also maintain employee support. A lot of your staff will be Muslim in the company, and they might be felt personally attacked. Also on the issue that came into the news that your product is associated with porcine or alcohol or any other association. So it's important to maintain the employee support of all your staff that are working in the company, Muslims and non-Muslims, that might feel personally attacked on that matter. After every issue and after every crisis, what is important to review the performance of your plans you have developed, to review your halal assurance system, to review your risk mitigation plan, to review also your recovery plan, to see if improvements can be made. You should not let any crisis go to waste. You have to learn and continuously improve. And we have seen examples of companies that were weathered through a very tough crisis, but that strengthened their corporate reputation after that incident and crisis, right? So a halal incident and halal crisis can also be an opportunity to strengthen your halal DNA as a company. So although Juni incident, you might not see the advantage of that, but maybe you come out stronger out of a crisis than before. It's important to realize that different companies have a different halal risk profile, a different halal supply chain risk profile. So for food companies, they require more extensive risk management than non-food companies, like in cosmetics and pharmaceuticals, in paint companies. So food has a higher risk than halal risk than non-food. Or secondly, if products are animal-based, if you have ingredients or additives in your consumer product that are animal-based, and it can be through gelatin or meat or certain animal-based enzymes, you have a higher risk than products that are non-animal-based. Yeah? Suppliers from non-Muslim countries require also more extensive risk management than suppliers from Muslim majority countries. Also, logistics service providers and distributors that are involved in distribution to Muslim markets like Indonesia, Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, they require more extensive risk management because halal is far more important in Muslim majority countries. Finally, if you are a brand owner from a non-Muslim country, you're also more exposed as compared to brand owners from Muslim majority countries. So based on those criteria, you can have a lower or higher halal supply chain risk profile. So if you have a higher halal supply chain risk profile, there should be a far bigger urgency to work on your halal risk management throughout your supply chain, covering the logistics, covering a halal supply chain blueprint, and also risk mitigation and recovery. So finally, I would like to share some insights on the halal risk reporting. During the halal risk control, I already mentioned that the monitoring is very important, the monitoring of the halal performance. So why do we need a halal risk report? I'm also a board member in several companies, and we also get risk reports. What we often see, however, that in a lot of risk reports, we see financial risk or political risk. or risk that can disrupt supply chains, like we had the COVID situation the last years. So what we often see that in those risk reports, we do not see halal risks mentioned. And I'm a believer that if we are operating or exporting to Muslim majority markets, advanced Muslim majority markets such as Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, we need also to have halal risk. Halal is not a responsibility purely for that department that is responsible for halal, the halal management team. No, halal is the responsibility of top management. So we need to have key performance indicators, not only for the halal management team department, but also for top management if we are operating in Muslim majority country or exporting to Muslim majority countries. It should be on their radar. So the halal risk report is an important addition to the financial, operational, and other risk that companies might face when operating. So what are the components of halal risk report we have been generating for brand owners? We have three important components of the halal risk report. First of all, a halal risk assessment to analyze the halal risk throughout the supply chain based on audits. So we understand then what are the halal risks and identify proper proposed countermeasures and control measures. Secondly, we also measure the halal performance of the company in different areas: halal maturity, halal trust, halal reputation of the company, licensed operator, halal rating. More on that later. Finally, based on the halal risk we found, based on the performance measurement of risk and reputation, that we will draft an action plan for the company to identify the risk in the supply chain, and secondly, also how to increase the halal performance of the company. Yeah? So in the halal risk assessment, we conduct a physical audit. So we are looking at what is the likelihood of certain issues that can happen, and also the impact on regulatory, like the halal regulatory system in Indonesia, but also the financial impact. This can also be related to the reputation impact of a company. So this is based on a physical audit throughout the supply chain. So our auditors, they will conduct interviews throughout the supply chain with suppliers, with logistics service providers, with distributors, both interviews and physical inspection, up to retail, right? Up to the restaurants. We even look at how the products are positioned. We also look at how they are labeled, how they are consolidated. We also looking at contracts. Halal supply chain is enforced through contracts in supply chains, right? Not everybody is halal certified in the supply chain. Distributors are often not halal certified. Retailers are often not halal certified. Also, logistics service providers are not always halal certified. If they are halal certified, they might have different halal control points and halal control measures as compared to the brand owner. So there are different halal practices in the supply chain, which are not always harmonized. So based on the rating, 7, 8, 9 will be more important to address as compared to issues in yellow, and existing control measures like under 1, 2, 3, that might be sufficient. Then we're looking at the halal performance measurement. Halal is moving towards a supply chain and value chain. So we have developed a rating mechanism. We call that the halal maturity of companies, to identifying the main position in the evolution of halal maturity, as well as also the performance on each area in terms of halal product, halal supply chain, and halal value chain. So this can be an important KPI for top management, and also to set targets. So maybe now in 2023, halal product is at 80, halal supply chain at 30, halal value chain at 15. By 2025, we want to be at 85, 40, and 20. By 2030, we want to be at these levels. So you can use it also to create concrete targets for companies. Then we talk about Halal Trust, which is another example of a KPI, which is important as a KPI to measure. Also, in case there is a halal incident, to see the impact of an incident on the halal trust of the Muslim consumer. Also, for this, we developed a survey, so we can conduct a survey among the Muslim consumer to understand what is the halal trust of the Muslim consumer for a brand. We can also do a competitive analysis, so we can also do a benchmarking with the halal trust of a company against the halal trust of another company. So you can benchmark as well. So that can also provide important intelligence how you are performing as compared to a competitor. For years of research, we developed a measurement to measure halal reputation of companies. It's called the Halal Reputation Index, which is also published in my book, Halal Business Management, as well as academic papers. So we have been able to measure the corporate halal reputation of companies, which is based on the measurement of 4 important drivers. So first of all is the halal authenticity of companies. I was looking at the halal policy of a company, the system put in place, the trust of the halal certification bodies. If you're certified by Halal Indonesia, BPPH, it will have top rating, 100. If you're certified by small Halal CB in Europe, which is not recognized by the Indonesian Halal Authority, which is operated from a small house, no proper system behind it, you will have a low rating. Yeah? So the choice of halal certification body is an important recognition also for the halal reputation of your brand and company. Internal messaging is based on your halal supply chain protocols you have developed. That will result in the internal messages rating. The external messaging is based on can we find. So if you put the name of your brand and halal in Google, in Facebook, in Instagram, what kind of responses do we get? Do we get halal positive responses, halal neutral, or halal negative? Yeah. So some companies that went through a crisis still have very negative results when you do their name and halal in search. Also, a company might have had incidents. So what was the track record of incident? And if there was an incident, how did they come out of that? So some companies came out very good. So that also has impact on the external messaging. Also, what is the relationship also you have with Muslim communities that also will contribute to the external messaging KPI. So we have developed an advanced algorithm to measure the halal reputation of companies. If you relate the halal reputation of a company towards the emerging market requirements, then you get the license to operate score. So the license to operate score is different per country. So if you're operating in the Brunei market, Indonesian market, Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, and UAE, you can relate your halal reputation index to the market requirement. As Indonesia is implementing a very stringent standard, Law 33, by October 2024, you see that your license to operate rating might drop because of new regulation. Brunei might have implemented a new fatwa. So also your rating might drop. So this is connecting your halal reputation to emerging halal requirements. So also important to track for the key markets, export markets you're operating in. Finally, we developed an overall halal rating, similar to financial ratings you might be familiar with, the AAA, the AA, A, B, C, and D rating. So this can be an overall rating, an overall performance rating, halal performance, halal DNA of the company, which can also be used also in as promotion on your website, as well as in also annual reports for companies. So I hope I gave you some insights on some aspects of risk management in the halal supply chain. And what I shared before is that the alignment is important. We see that important regulatory developments in Indonesia. We see big developments also in terms of the needs and wants of the Muslim consumer. Brand owners need to step up. They need to react. Action is required. Halal logistics need to be addressed by companies throughout the supply chain. We see that with a lot of brand owners, they take halal for granted. They are certified. It's good enough to be compliant according to the halal regulation of Indonesia. That is not good enough anymore. You need to understand the halal risk throughout your supply chain and strengthen your halal risk management beyond your halal assurance system to include a halal supply chain blueprint, proper halal risk mitigation, and also proper halal crisis management. This was my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. I look forward for your questions after the next speaker, Ibu Nurhayati. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Marco. It was a very enlightening discussion. Hope we can get all the benefit of your discussion today, and yeah, it was very good. Okay, thank you. Next, continue to Ibu Nurhayati for bringing the next issue in food safety and distribution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. A minute to share my presentation, please. Okay, I try to. Rizky, could you please confirm whether my
Yes.
slide is clear to be
Good
observed?
and clear.
Okay.
Good, visible. Enough.
Perfect. Thank you.
Please continue.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening. Our very distinguished keynote speaker, Pak Marco, and also our very own facilitator, Pak Rizky, and our dearest participant in here. Thank you for having me for this valuable session. So, as the order from Pak Rizky, I have to share about the food safety itself. I try to how to make the connection between food safety in practicing in regard into halal logistics and also in every food flow system. So that's why I choose my title, food safety in practicing. Okay. Some issue to be concerned about the food safety itself, and it gives some impact. Let's say, and I so believe everyone here have some experience about the foodborne illness, maybe such as diarrhea or vomiting something. I know that one. Okay, I have once in my life, but in terms that we get some foodborne illness symptoms, we cannot do anything unless we are looking for the medicine and not tell anybody. While it's something to be reported actually. So this is the data I'm taking from the WHO, not from Indonesian government, because it's very limited information about the foodborne illnesses cases in Indonesia, unless there is something a big occasion, because we call it a food outbreak. So it is estimated for 600 million, and it's equal almost 1 in 10 people in the world fall ill after eating contaminated food. So I would like to highlight about the contamination issue in food, which is leading to mortality. For die issue. I mean, everybody will get this foodborne illness and leading to the death. And then also in terms that we are looking for the economical loss of opportunity, that's kind of data that mentioning about the 110 billion in loss every year in productivity and medical expenses. to recover about the foodborne illness, especially in low and middle income countries. But Indonesia not among this category. But foodborne disease it could be some overwhelming issue in terms that we are looking for socio-economic and any opportunity issue, such as Indonesia are growing in tourism or even in trade area. Okay. Let's take for some contemplation. Why food safety? Everybody agree. In terms that we are consuming, when we consume a food, we are not looking for the taste or indulging for our taste alone, but we are also looking for something that we get some word about the quality itself and say the food safe after we are consumed. So this is something essential that when we consume food, it should be safe. So in terms that we are looking for the safe, it is something that we have to calculate about the risk. As Professor Marco mentioning about the halal, he's calculating into the risk management. Also in food safety, there is a risk management. We are mapping into the hazard possibility, which is we are calculating the likelihood into the severity. So that's why we have we need some information about the natural character about for all the food, regardless from where the food is harvesting, on how the food is distributing, and on how the food is consuming. So that's why we call from farm to table. It is very essential. So that's why we have to acknowledge and also getting known about the food character itself. Most of the food are getting spoiled in certain time. So that's why we have to catch up and capturing any possibilities that make food could be leading to spoilage, which is it could be become from the hazard itself during the farming, or even during the distribution, or even during the processing. So we call this food hazard analysis. So that's why the final issue about the food safety is all about the foodborne illness. We can only count the foodborne illness issue to be raised as long as two people who eat the same food and become ill with the same symptom. So that's why we calculate as a foodborne disease. This issue also capturing how to manage food distribution from the farm into the table. So that's why the food safety itself is something very important issue that we need to make some good conditioning throughout the food flow system. So in terms that we are talking about the foodborne illness, it's going to be something that triggering this foodborne illness. So this is the very common what is to call the source of foodborne illness that we are many issue found is contaminants. What is contaminant? It is something that not heavily and not properly are getting into our food. Okay. The five big contaminant we're capturing into the foodborne issue is, let's say, from the animals used for food. So by nature, the food source itself have some what is called microbe or even a creature that are naturally living on the animal source. So it could be manageable, but in terms that some living creature, let's say microbe, is become contamination into the other food, it could be the hazard. So this one is quite different, which is natural resource, and when it's transport or when it's moved into the other area, that could be which is not properly at all, it could be the hazard. Another things that could be said as a contaminant is become from the air, I mean the surrounding or environment, or even water and dirt or debris. Another thing also as Indonesian farming, or even something that we are connecting into chemical as we call it food preservatives, we call it chemicals base. It could be also when improper or mishandling of chemical and also improper using of chemical, it could be a contaminant. Another things, natural contaminants is also something part of let's say part of the raw material of food material, but it's not proper into part of the food specification. Let's say we get something example chicken nugget. So the chicken nugget is so we means meat or mean without bone or boneless. So if we found bone in the nugget, it could be contaminated. Also, we facing about the habit people such as the regulatory issue or even something that we call sabotages and accidentally. Okay. In regard to distribution or something about the food logistics, it is part of the flow of food. But in terms of we are talking about food safety, in each of flow food, we are adapting the same standard. So that's why we calling is a good practice. We can call it a good manufacturing practice when it fall into the food production area, or we call food distribution practice when it's used for the distribution activities or logistic. We call also good agricultural practice when we are practicing about the food safety in agriculture area. And also another things that we call of good what is called catering practice when we are using food safety practice in catering or food and beverage business. So if we are looking flow of food throughout the flow of food, something that very main issue is called contaminated. So when we are talking about the food safety, is how the effort to making some low risk that comes from contamination. Another things that we should also consider about the contamination that we and also contribute into the food safety issue is all about time temperature abuse. It's all correlated into the food flow here, and also in regard to the food logistic practicing. So this is the 10 generic concept of food safety. We call it a prerequisite. So 10 principles. So these 10 principles we can found in every full flow of food practicing. Allow me to explain what the blue arrow here and the other one is the red arrow here. I'm trying to looking which factor could be collaborate, or in terms of implementation we can integrate into the other system. Let's say the we call halal assurance system. Actually, there are some opportunity in terms that we have to implement a food safety management system and become some what is called integrated system into the halal assurance system. We can find some or several prerequisite program that we can merge some requirement that's come from food safety, and also some requirement that come from halal assurance. So the red arrow is a possibility that we can integrate, which is food safety management system require this, and also halal management system require those things that we can find in food safety management system. Allow me to mentioning. One is how to prevent cross-contamination. The second is practice proper hygiene. And the third one is how to practice cleaning and sanitize. And then the other one is food storaging and how to procure or buying the food from the safe source. Okay, from the blue one, it is the a big issue that several times or we can much more find about the foodborne illnesses that come from control time and temperature. So that's why the terminology of time temperature abuse is always mentioning if we are looking into the investigation of foodborne disease. Okay. Time temperature control become the most important things in food safety implementation. Why? Because we are catching up into the nature of contamination. Let's say we are mentioning the common contamination into the three group, which is contamination of microbiology or microbial contamination, chemical contamination, and physical contamination. But the two others, I mean, chemical and physical, less likely to contribute into the food safety issue, which is leading to the foodborne illness. The things that we have to concern about the food issue, the most food issue that rise up is coming from the microbial contamination. As the microbe is the living creature, it is quite the same needed like a human. Yeah. We call some requirement how the microbe can growing or even life living and make some survive factor. It is a phantom, which is from food, and then time, temperature, acidity, moisture, oxygen. So that's why time temperature is always mentioning as the big concern how to control to prevent the foodborne illness is rising. Okay, time temperature for the microbial, it should be varied and it is kind of 5 to 57. We call it danger zone. Why danger zone? Because within the range 5 to 57 degrees Celsius, pathogens grow much faster. In terms that the growing much faster, it should be some what is to call preventive action to minimize this growing of pathogen, make some food to be spoilage or make some food leading into contaminated. So that's why time temperature in logistic or food distribution is quite important, as well as the other food flow process. In terms that time temperature also we can also find out in another process such as cooking or cooling or holding. Yeah. This time and temperature abuse could be leading into whatever any big six pathogen that could be grow up, and then how to manage this big six pathogen could be minimized in terms that they are growing faster. We are considering to make some monitoring for time and temperature. So that's why about the issue, the uncooked food, it could be also leading to foodborne, or even unholding food, it could be leading to the foodborne disease, or uncooked or improperly heated food is also leading to the foodborne issues. Even in logistics, how we maintain how the food distribution along the distribution time or distribution route, we have to we have to record how the time and how the temperature is also protected or not, in terms that we can make some strand. This is between the range that the food is still safe or whether the food is getting to unsafe condition. So that's why how to avoid time and temperature abuse is firstly support by the data. Data how to monitor time and temperature in constantly, and then make sure the tool itself is quite worth or available and correct kind to monitor the time and temperature. And then how to trace this is for the implementation is proper, we can check into the record. And then how to manage during the times logistics span or the time of cooking span is minimized to expose into the danger zone of temperature. So that's why when we found something that leading into the danger condition, we need to immediately take the corrective action to shape the food into good condition. This is some conventional tools how to monitoring the temperature or even also maybe collaborated into the time itself. But as we are facing into the technology area, time temperature monitoring becomes something a big data that we can calculate and we can interpret and we can make some trend or even we can make some tracing about the food itself, whether this food is in good condition or even leading into the foodborne disease. So that's why Internet of Things or something that data logging or even real-time monitoring, it is become the emerging tools that we need in practicing of food safety area right now. Okay, something that we have to concern that situation can lead contamination of food other than time and temperature abuse. Is become from the personal hygiene. Personal hygiene also related into the halal assurance system, which is how we maintain the personal cleanliness. And also we found that our conditions are proper to getting into the work and touching the food. Let's say we have the foodborne illness history, such as a jaundice. This is very important thing because it's quite severe or maybe a high risk factor that can leading the food into the food transmitter. Food transmittant, and then it could be leading to the foodborne illness. Another practicing or another condition that could be lead into the food to be contaminated from the personal that's come from sneeze or coughing, or also another illness such as diarrhea or jaundice and sore throat or something like this. Also related to the condition of cleanliness and hygiene. Halal assurance also required this condition into the person who are handling the food. So that's why I can make sure that food handler hygiene or cleaning and sanitize of the personnel is could be some requirement that both system are required. So how to manage the personal hygiene program in terms of food distribution or also food preparation or along with the food services. Sometimes we have to make some theoretical into the habit, but couldn't agree more. It is kind of a long journey, but in terms that we have to make some policies, it is kind of the first step how to manage the personal hygiene program. Then we can escalate when the policies itself once settle up. We can deliver these policies into the training media, and then we can also monitoring or evaluating whether these policies or even education that we are conduct previously becomes a good behavior into supervising about the food safety practices and even rewarding or something to make them very happy and consistently absorb the good practicing in personal hygiene program. And then another support how to manage the personal hygiene program is also in good condition is facilitating the washing or facilitation. This is the very mandatory even in during the food distribution. Washing hands is very mandatory because this is the first places that could be more indicate into the factor that transmitting something that contaminated or even food debris that could be contaminated into the other foods. So that's why washing hands is mandatory procedure in every food safety practicing. How about the hands washing station? Ideally, hot hand washing station, it should be provided with hot and cold running water. But I do believe it's rarely to found in Indonesian food production facility. And then also facilitate with the soap and sanitation agent itself. Okay. In terms of how we facilitate the personal hygiene, another issue is how to settle up with the cleaning and sanitation. As the cleaning and sanitation is two kind of different things, even different activities. Sometimes people are quite enough in perspective by using sanitation or sanitizer only to clean up everything, while this is improper practicing in food safety, because in terms that we are using or we are doing the cleaning procedure, it is something to eliminate the food dirt or debris. In terms that we are practicing about sanitation, it is dedicated to minimize the microbial in operation to growing faster. So that's why cleaning and sanitation is different things to do. It is something very practically that food safety regulation or food regulation recommended how to use chemical in food preparation area or even in food distribution. Chlorine is the first thing that recommended. Also, we can use iodine and quartz. But it is very dedicated and very customized. Something that very widely used is chlorine. And then another issue about the cleaning and sanitation, it is something that we can reduce food contamination. Food contamination, as I mentioned before, there is three category: biological, physical, and chemical. But something that very dominantly rising up into food safety issue is biological contamination. It is come from viruses, bacteria, parasite, or even pests. So that's why in halal also pests become contamination. Yeah, as well as the food safety pests also become the contamination. It is something that very start process or point that we can integrate into food safety and halal assurance system. Another things that we can integrate into the both system is about how to select the supplier and also when the food is coming into the storage. food safety are required to make some supplier selection. So that's why we are only approved to buy something or to buy food material from the approval supplier, not appointed, but approved supplier, which is there are their performance, their practicing are correlated into our food safety implementation in our area. Why? Because contamination itself, as we know, coming from the raw material. If we are still account into the supplier, if we are still buying the raw material from the supplier itself should be concerned about the food safety. So that's why approved supplier is very mandatory in terms that we are implementing food safety management system. Approved supplier, which is mean from all logistician or food distribution, is kind of the mandatory activity to implement food safety. If you are become the food or if you are become the approved supplier, so that's why approved supplier is very mandatory. We call prerequisite program in food safety. Along the activity of about the purchasing of the food, it's become into the storing. Why food safety itself required how to manage the food storing? Because some issue are coming from unrotating food that leading into the spoilage also or deterioration of food. So a way we are manage the rotation of food storaging is the way we are make some good condition how the food safety itself become effectively in practicing. Let's say we are make some requirement how the food that we use, how the raw material food that we use into the food production not over the expiration date. So that's why we are using the system we call FIFO or FIFO or anything, because expiration date it should be leading to the quality itself and also to the spoilage. Another thing is about the storing item. Since the food material or food product, something that required nature of storaging, let's say the dried food, it's used to store in the relative humidity, in certain relative humidity, and for the cold food, is required in the low temperature, or even the frozen food is to be conditioning in the freezing temperature. So that's why storing or rotating food is very mandatory in food safety implementation. Another issue about the storing is how to prevent the cross-contamination. So that's why we have some management, how to food storing can prevent the cross-contamination. Let's say, if we have the frozen food that from frozen meat, I mean raw frozen meat, it should be a different some storing management with the frozen food, but cooked frozen food. So in term that we are delivery or distribute frozen food that raw frozen food and cooked frozen food, it should be segregated, because we are intended to prevent the issue of about the cross contamination. Another things how to prevent cross contamination is about the cleanliness itself. Let's say the containers or the trays or the charts is found to be dirt. Could be the factor that source of contamination. Even in halal assurance, if we found the dirt, it could be the najis, yeah, we call contamination, halal contamination. So that's why we can implement or integrating this storing, practicing both food safety and also halal assurance system. Another issue about preventing cross-contamination in cooler and freezer, it is dedicated into the food that required cold and freeze temperature, which is highly concerned for the high-risk food, such as raw meat or even poultry, seafood, and ready-to-eat food. Or even we call ground meat or what is to call fast food, maybe fast food or cooked food, something. And also another raw meat that could be highly risk in terms that we are not storing in proper time and in proper temperature condition. Another thing that we can also integrate between food safety and halal assurance system, which is required in food safety management system, is all about the active managerial control. What should be the active managerial control concept itself in food safety is all about the focusing on controlling the risk factor for foodborne illness, which is comprising into the prerequisites itself. One of them is kind of how to purchase the food from safe sources, and then how to controlling the food into correctly temperature, how to um, create or how to maintain the equipment as the source of good facilitating, but not for not as a contaminating equipment, and also how to monitoring personnel that involved in food flow, practicing a personal hygiene. So the big five issue is become mandatory in practicing food safety in terms of we are looking for managerial control. Another thing is that we have to concern, because this is about the control itself, we have to find all the effective ways to achieve the control itself become into habit and competency. So that's why in terms that we are implementing food safety management system, I do believe also in halal assurance system, training program it should be recommended, because we have to mapping about the knowledge itself, the needed, and how to make this knowledge into the behavior, and also how to make some critical decision, such as manager supervision, and also how to looking and what is to call performing the good implementation. Okay. Another things in managerial control, how to make keep food safe is how to anticipate any issue about the foodborne illness factor, and then how to eliminate this. So that's why this food safety issue become something that we could calculate into the risk factor or risk hazard management. Okay, another things that we need to monitor is the person itself. So the staff or even the food handler or even the driver who take or distribute the food become knowledgeable about the food safety. This is the best practice. How the managerial control can prevent or eliminate any risk about the foodborne illness. The first thing is about the identify the risk itself, which is come from the raw material or from the incoming process or coming from the storing, and also about the distributing, and also along with the cooking or preparing and during the servicing. Another thing is about the monitor. So we are considering also about the tools. And then the third factor is about the corrective action. Something that we found non-conforming activity or non-conforming finding immediately as the managerial control would be good in action is finding out the root cause and then make some corrective action along with the preventive action. So this why management oversight or a good environmenting working hood is could be some support how this managerial control in terms of implementing food safety in good condition could be more effectively. Another thing is also support by the education or training, and then we make some re-evaluation.
Nurhayati, I'm sorry to say that time is running out.
Okay, thank you. I would try to make the presentation more faster so the time could be more precisely. Thank you, Pak Rizky. Another thing is identify risk and then also monitor is part of managerial control and corrective action, management oversight, training, and re-evaluation is a six big program when food safety or even a halal assurance system could be implemented. Something that we facing right now is all about the technology support. So that's why in terms of the food safety, issue about the food traceability that related into the technological support is more stable. So that's why automatic system or even e-learning and then how to minimize the contaminated in the food, it should be using the technological itself. What's our contribution? The food safety implementation in the flow food, it should be the good contribution into sustainable development goals, which is it is the key also into our food security or even food sovereignty. So as the conclusion, as food safety is mandatory in every food flow practices, food safety is everyone is businesses. Any question or any discussion or any reviewing, feel free to deliver to me in this discussion and also along with the my email or my personal contact. Thank you. Rizky.
Okay, thank you, Pak Marco and Ibu Nurhayati. It has been quite interesting discussion about food safety, and surprisingly, that the one thing I can notice is that halal supply chain and food distribution goes along the way in one fine red line. So it goes very good with our theme is how halal logistics can enhance the food safety and distribution, because actually it operates almost the same method, yeah, Pak Marco and Ibu Nurhayati, if you can agree like that. But before continuing, I have some question from Pak Hubert. Pak Hubert is the student of Batch 3 Doctoral Entrepreneurship, Prasetiya Mulya University. The question is for both of Mr. Marco and Bu Nurhayati. Concerning the driving factor required in implementing halal logistics supply chain, we notice that it is believed that the only prominent and reputable organization with knowledgeable management capability, management support, and organizational strategy could apply halal supply chain management. With regard to halal logistics and business processes management, do you see that digitalization is a must to effectively implement halal supply chain system in survive in today's highly dynamic and competitive business environment? I think maybe goes to Marco first to answer, and then Ibu Nurhayati goes secondly.
Thank you, Pak Rizky. Important question. I think a lot of Companies are looking at digitalization. You see blockchain initiatives being implemented. I think what is most important that you need to create a halal supply chain, make it halal by design, create a robust halal supply chain. And a robust halal supply chain is about identifying halal control points in your supply chain and controlling those halal control points. That's first. Halal is embedded through contracts. Yeah, supply chain, you have suppliers, you have customers, you have distributors, logistics service providers, retailers. So halal compliance is enforced, embedded through contracts. So you need to have contract clauses that have halal mentioned in there, but also what Ibu Nurhayati mentioned about food safety, pest management, hygiene. So halal and toyiban are enforced through contract clauses. Traceability is, from my perspective, and high-end IT systems are not required to create halal excellence. When everything needs to be digitalized, it would wipe out all the SMEs. So I think the niyat intention would not be good by doing that. And I think halal supply chain can be organized by identifying halal control points in supply chains, by proper contract clauses with supply chain parties, and conducting audits to make sure that people are following those SOP and contract clauses. I think that's most important. Halal by design, and not halal by traceability. So that's my perspective. Thank you.
Okay. Over to you, Bu Nurhayati.
Okay, interesting issue. In food safety itself, as technology emerging could be support the food safety component. Let's say we are knowing about the food fraudulence. No, nowadays, food fraudulence it is something becomes a complicated issue. We are using some technology to find out whether the food is really authentic or not, even in halal also, even in halal as well. So that's why technology are very important to support these things. We calling it food safety integrity because we are combining food safety requirement and also food fraudulence and something that in economicals that combining into these things. That's why food integrity also support in technology. Even food safety requirement are prerequisite itself, such as time temperature monitoring, also using the technology itself. So that's why technology it is something that's very supportive in this implementation, I thought.
Okay. So we can conclude that technology will enhance both the processes of halal supply chain and the halal and the food distribution. Okay. Okay, so goes to the next question. Actually, it will be like 4 questions. Maybe we will split some question to Pak Marco and some question to Bu Nurhayati to answer. It's from Pak Rizal Bahara. Number 1 will be, we know that there are 3 pillars of sustainability, namely economic, social, and environmental. How is halal related to these 3 pillars in sustainability, especially in SME? Who will be answering this early? Pak Marco or Bu Nurhayati?
I can give some perspective on that first question.
Okay, please.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Rizky. I think, yeah, sustainability is an important factor nowadays. We have the climate change awareness, let's put it like that. And also UN Sustainable Development Goals, which a lot of companies are referring to, are pushed by government to address that through regulation, like in Europe. It was a great book written on the Green Dean, what Islam teaches about protecting the planet, written by late Ibrahim Abdul Matin. He passed away, unfortunately, last week. This book was written in 2010, and he was a visionary. So he wrote a book about what Islam in the Holy Quran and the Sunnah talks about: sustainability, about food waste, about energy. Really great book. I referred also in my PhD research about this important work what the late Abdul Matin wrote about. He was visionary, and luckily from the Holy Quran and the Sunnah there are a lot of guidelines on how to implement sustainability and what to address in terms of sustainability. So also Wakaf. Indonesia is one of the global leaders on the Wakaf instrument that can be applied for SMEs. So this is also one of the areas we're looking at Modern Halal Valley in Indonesia, in the Halal Park, where we also are working with SMEs programs, also leveraging on the Wakaf instrument. So I think there are several components in there. I do not think that there is conflict between the UN Sustainable Development Goals and Islam. I think there are a lot of common areas where both are complementing each other and are probably in harmony with each other. I think more research though is required on comparability of Islamic values and UN Sustainable Development Goals, and I think that will be quite positive results, I believe, but I think research is needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco.
So cool. The second question will goes to Ibu Nurhayati. I think to make business food of SME or food industry, we have to have competitive advantage and always sustain. We must combine halal with other system. How with halal with other system like lean or green productivity? Ibu Nurhayati, your comment, please.
Thank you. I thought permission also, Pak Rizky. I just read the question along with the number 2 and the number 4. It is something that quite similar in terms that we are making some question and best practices. Let's say I got this beverage packaging. So in Indonesia, this product couldn't be found in market if we don't have any izin edar, or this registered number into the market. Izin edar, with this we call MD, merek dalam, or PIRT, product industri rumah tangga. Okay, so how we get this number? It is fulfillment into the food safety requirement. One of the requirement is how to implement the food safety best practice in their facility. We call it cara produksi pangan yang baik dan benar, or in English we call good manufacturing practices. One of the requirement of good manufacturing practices is also similar with the halal management system, halal assurance system, or even any other quality management system or any management system. Let's say how we selected the supplier. How we selected the supplier in terms that food safety requirement is all about the safe food sources. When we are talking into halal assurance, how the raw material or any food that we buy should be clear in halal status, halal certificate. Yes, okay. So when we are combining into the other system also, how we make some supplier also contribute into our management system. So that's why it's become one procedure. How to select supplier, how to purchase the food, how to purchase raw material. It is the one of example, simplified how to integrate any other system. Otherwise, food safety or halal assurance system or any management system. That's something that's very simple that we can integrate like that. So overfacing the SME problem, I know Indonesia is very complicated how to embarking a small medium enterprise into competitive market. So this is very what is to call how we together gathering hand in hand, all practitioner or educator and also government how to embarking this SME more knowledgeable, more easier in terms of their implementing management system, regardless halal, food safety, or any management system. Actually, in my practicing, because I'm also the halal auditor and also food safety auditor, something that very simply how to make SME more captivable in terms that they are consistently implementing this system. We are providing the simple procedure. Simple procedure for person in task. And then this simple procedure, simple monitoring check sheet, or even simple business processing to make them more what is to call more practically more simple, not become overburdened in terms of you're making some recording or something. I thought we can use some technological or something because we know some enterprise resource program. It could be also support into the both system. Nowadays, open source like this, it would be more accessible, and then we can endorse this to the SME to make simplified in implementation. I thought this is very practical in my opinion, since we are also I'm also engaging with this SME in terms that we are educating into the food safety implementation and also halal assurance. Thank you,
Okay.
Pak.
Okay, so it will be halal very implemented in a very simple way that SME can apply easily to their practice of daily business. Okay. And next, I think number 3 will be yours, Pak Marco.
Yeah.
What
So
is
the
your
question, so the question is, what is your opinion if you want to apply Halal Reputation Index to SMEs? Because there's a lot of problem to apply Halal SMEs. I think we need to differentiate between micro SMEs that are working from a house environment. I think the main issue is probably what Ibu Nurhayati would agree with, is not halal, but might be mainly food safety issue, because children are walking around, dogs and cats and whatever else. So I think for micro SMEs, the issue is more on Toyeban, because halal, the foundation of halal is Toyeban. So they need to first work on Toyeban, and halal might be a second step. So the micro SMEs should be focused on food safety, Toyeban aspect, whereas the more professional SMEs that are working from a factory location, I think for those SMEs that are working from a factory location, not in the house, I think for SMEs, that they should look also at halal and halal reputation. It could be one of the KPIs. And in my book, Halal Business Management, a guide to achieving halal excellence, I talk about halal excellence, and it is a process. So the halal reputation index, but also halal maturity could be KPIs that give you guidance to provide targets, where to develop your halal system over the years to come. So I believe that halal maturity and halal reputation index definitely could be an important KPI for SMEs, but these are SMEs that have their own factory location and not the micro SMEs. Thank you.
Okay, so we focus on the structure and the SOP, so it will be easily used by the SME. Okay. Okay, another question is also from Pak Hubert. He's very keen on discussion tonight. Okay, Pak Hubert is asking, dear Pak Marco, it will be for you, Pak Marco. Good evening. Your concern on halal logistics has shifted from the business perspective to the customer perspective. How blockchain can benefit halal food supply chain by improving traceability, transparency, and consumer trust in halal food? I think it will be on you, Pak.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Hubert, for asking that question. I have two thoughts on blockchain. yes, blockchain is a perfect technology that would facilitate traceability. On the other hand, the infrastructure for blockchain is also expensive. Indonesia is a developing country, a lot of Muslim countries. I do work for the Islamic Development Bank, a lot of Muslim countries are developing countries. So if we are that halal blockchain to provide trust to Muslim consumer, we might hatch to SMEs, to Muslim countries, wiping away SMEs. The halal. So I should be very careful in providing that traceability and blockchain is required to produce halal. Because in the Holy Quran, many verses we learn that God doesn't want to create hardship to the people. So that's always an important mirror I put for myself in anything I suggest in the halal space. So we should not create unnecessary hardship to the people. So yes, it is an almost perfect instrument for traceability. But do we help SMEs with this? Do we are not killing our industries in developing countries instead? So that's important. I did research on blockchain to apply blockchain technology for halal industry, and I found future perspectives, future use to manage halal supply chain, also to in the case of a halal incident, to collect data to share with the halal authorities, also to align halal supply chains with consumer markets, Muslim markets that have different requirements, like Saudi Arabia has different requirements than Indonesia, Malaysia has different requirements, Brunei has different requirements. So you can use technology to simplify halal supply chain alignment. You can use technology to do advanced traceability, but we have to be careful by not creating necessary hardship with the guidance from the Quran, which gives us. So that's always a system that I always would like to protect the SMEs in the industry, because the SMEs are the backbone of the halal industry. It is true in Malaysia, it's true certainly in Indonesia. It's also recognized by the Indonesian government and also in other Muslim countries. So we have to protect SME. There's an important obligation we have. And that's why with every regulation we put in place, with every technology we would like to implement, we have to make sure that we can benefit also the SMEs and not eliminate SMEs. So, thank you.
Thank you, Marco. But I think we must insist that our government or all government unites to create one ecosystem of blockchain to do and monitor this implementation of halal logistics. Anyway, we will have this mandatory by October next year only. So it will be better if we have some governing bodies to monitor about this. Okay, up to the next question from Ibu Nurhayati. Good evening, Dr. Marco, and maybe Ibu Nurhayati can also help for this. Thank you for sharing for halal logistics report. May I know why halal rating Indonesia, the largest Muslim population in the country, is the lowest compared to other countries? Yes, you have that in your some slides, I think, Mr. Marco.
No, that is not correct. The slide I can put on.
It was.
So let me put on the slide.
Yes.
Licensed operator rating.
Our performance. Yes, this one.
Yeah. Well, this is just an example, right? So this is just an example. So what happens with what we do with the license to operate rating, so the more stringent requirements there are, the lower can be your license to operate rating, right? The easier the halal requirements are, the higher is your license to operate rating. And so like earlier, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, most products are not halal certified in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So any halal certificate previously who gave access to the halal market in Saudi Arabia. So they were very lenient on halal regulation in Saudi Arabia. It's currently changing. So the lower the license operate rating is, the more stringent are the requirements. So this is not a performance rating of Indonesia per se, the low performance of Indonesia. No, the lower the license operating of a certain country is, the more stringent are the halal regulation. And as you correctly say, Pak Rizky, Indonesia is implementing a very stringent regulation for food by October 2024 next year, which is around the corner, not only impacting the manufacturer of food, but also the distributor, the retailer, the logistics service provider, even the port operation. So that has massive impact for brand owners. I think not everybody is realizing yet the implications of this. So I think that's why this important webinar on halal logistics is very timely to create that awareness. So I think Indonesia shows a leadership role here globally to be the first country to make halal certification mandatory in the world. So I think that leadership will also be followed by countries like Malaysia, also that will make probably in future also halal certification mandatory. Also, I think I was very pleased to learn about the mutual recognition between the Indonesian halal certification body BPJPH and also JAKIM, that the mutual recognize now each other's halal logo on consumer products, also allowing the access of Malaysian products that are halal certified by JAKIM also to be allowed to be distributed at retail level in Indonesia with the Malaysian halal logo as well. So it is certainly not a low rating of Indonesia. I think if you look at the state of the Islamic economy report from Dinar Standard, Indonesia is fast shooting up and has already top ratings in several areas. Also thanks to Pak Jokowi, the president of Indonesia, that is actively developing the halal ecosystem in Indonesia, including also development of halal parks, including also modern halal valley in Banten, Cikambi. Thank you.
Ibu Nurhayati, you have something to add?
Okay. I thought allow me also to elaborate this issue into the question of Pak Win Rizaldi. Okay. Yeah. Pak Rizaldi raises the issue about the most gap or challenging is in terms of synchronized regulation. It is my best experience during my activity as a halal auditor. Right before BPJPH or BPJPH give some certain requirement. LPPMUI as the most initiative certain body, certification body, who makes a system to engage into the other certification body. We enlisted all certification body out of Indonesia as recognized certification body who approve with the LPPMUI. It is kind of how we manage some peer reviewing or something that we can manage, that we are certainly sure their system, the other certification body out of Indonesia, I mean LPPMUI, are certainly similar assessing the certificate process. I mean halal auditing. So that's why I thought, in terms of synchronizing, yeah, it's a kind of a processing or something, but somehow in terms that we are looking for effectively halal assurance system is making some integrated system. I mean, prerequisite is should be mandatory. I thought everybody could be agree. Prerequisite of halal assurance system is very mandatory, which is we are focusing into how to find out the raw material or even food product or something that related into product is precisely and recognizedly as halal requirement, as well as the food safety itself. I thought this is something that very importantly as a prerequisite. But complicated issue are coming in between the implementation. How we can make some authentic information whether this raw material is fully halal, not also by documenting, but also in practicing, and also by the scientists is proven, because it is very complicated when we found, let's say in Indonesia itself, we found some meatball, we call bakso, Pak Marco, that's mixing with non-halal food, non-halal material. Non-halal material is not also coming from the pork or derivatives, which is impractically, let's say, meatball that mixing from the halal meat and non-halal meat. It is become non-halal food, non-halal meat. Meatball, non-halal meatball. You get what I mean. I mean, in practical, we are using the same material but different status, halal and non-halal, even the same beef. Yeah, so that's why it is quite complicated in here. So that's why synchronizing, maybe in my opinion, is how to make some requirement is quite similar in action and also consistently in implementation. Quite long history and
Right.
long journey instead.
May I comment?
Yeah.
May-
Please,
Uh,
Pak Marco.
According to my experience, in seaport warehouse in Priok, they already implement halal. They have halal warehouse. Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. But in airport warehouse, they haven't implement halal warehouse. That is the problem. They have pharma procedure. Pharma procedure is almost reach the safety procedure of chemical food, perishable, everything, something like that. But still not yet implement the halal. This is what I said. The halal system not yet synchronized into the pharma and or IATA regulation. So this one must be what do you call the Ibu Nurhayati must be encouraged some party to what do you call synchronize this one. So every warehouse either in seaport and airport also can do the same thing. So not only seaport or seaport warehouse. So that is what I mean. So this is still partial thing. So not every terminal practice this halal. So that's why I said not synchronized yet. That is what
Yeah,
I
that's
mean.
correct. Thank you, Pak Wind. If I may just give my first reaction. I think spot on. We see that there are some initiatives in isolation, like Tanjung Priok. They have their halal certified warehouse. But it's just a warehouse. What about the port terminal? And what about inspection? Because we have veterinary services and also customs that do inspection. They only have one booth, and then they come in halal, then they checking pork, then halal, and then pork again. So they are opening it up with the same room, the same utensils, and then closing it and putting it back in the container. It's different from a lab where you destroy the sample. The inspection in the port, you don't destroy the sample. So just the warehouse is not good enough. We need to identify halal by the terminal operator and the warehouse in the port. Not everything goes via the warehouse. So it needs to be the terminal operator should be certified. So making sure that inspections follow halal protocols, that halal is identified on freight documents in IT system. As you correctly mentioned, we have IATA for air freight. We have IMO coding for sea freight. We have also a customs code. Customs doesn't have a code for halal. IATA doesn't have a code for halal. IMO doesn't have a code for halal. So start first with a halal code for customs. Look also at halal certification of the airport terminal and the sea terminal. Halal warehouse is not good enough. Only a fraction of the cargo goes via a warehouse. Most of it doesn't stop at the warehouse. So we need to look at the certification of the terminals itself, seaports, airports, and maybe also inland terminals at borders. Thank you.
So only maybe 20% of the ecosystem on the terminal, so like start from warehouse. So it's doing partially halal, not completely, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that is the homework.
So,
Okay.
so Mr. Pak Marco, I think you need to deliver more material about this because I think the awareness about halal logistics, halal supply chain, and halal value chain is quite low, if I can say. I think Ibu Nurhayati also agree about this. Yeah. Okay, we are coming to the end of our webinars. It's been actually more than what we have planned before. So, you have any last word, Pak Marco, Bu Nurhayati?
Maybe I can start first.
Yes.
So I think, yeah, Pak Rizky and Ibu Nurhayati, it's a great pleasure to talk on this important topic. I think Indonesia is giving a great example to the world to make halal certification mandatory. Indonesia also looking at halal requirements for the entire supply chain. There's a lot of work to be done for the ports, the seaports, airports, logistics, the logistic operator. Indonesia is a complex country with so many islands, there's so many SMEs. So this is a very, very big development. And really logistics will be an important concept to be learned about. So I really appreciate the work you are doing, Pak Rizky, in putting this topic also loud. And we need to educate also the Indonesian population, the Indonesian industry about the importance of halal logistics and a halal supply chain. So I think the coming 24 months will be, I think, very important for Indonesia to address halal logistics effectively. And October 2024 is around the corner. So I think a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Marco. Appreciate your valuable insight for tonight. And the next, Bu Nurhayati.
A very simply quote. Safe and halal food for now, for Indonesia better tomorrow.
Yes, it's now or never, yeah, Bu, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So by that, we conclude the meeting. Now it will be time for us to make some picture of our documentation. Please, everybody, please turn on your video. We'll be taking pictures for documentation. We'll be removing this, sorry. Okay. Let me count 3, 2, 1. Number 1. Just this one not very good. 3, 2, 1. Okay, that concludes all. Thank you, Pak Marco, Ibu Nurhayati, and valuable audiences for having this meeting, for joining this meeting. It is the first step, but will be for the development of halal logistics, halal supply chain, and halal value chain. But we will be praying for the best and good future in the more to come. Okay, thank you. You can
Thank you,
all-
Pak Marco.
Thank you, Pak
Bu
Marco.
Nurhayati.
Maya.
Thank you, Pak